Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be shedding light on how to reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee. So, how do you reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee? Without further ado, without further delay, allow me to demystify that answer to that inquiry right here, right now. In order to reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee, you can implement risk mitigation measures. So, what are some of these prudent, anodyne, precautionary risk mitigation measures that you can implement in order to reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee? Without further ado, without further delay, allow me to demystify that answer to that inquiry right here, right now. First and foremost, you need to be amenable to working at least well over 70 hours per week. For an employer, if you want to be able to significantly reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee, you also need to be amenable to making extreme concessions and extreme dispensations in order to be able to eminently appease an employer if you want to be able to significantly reduce the risk of getting fired from your company. You need to be amenable to working off the clock when requested. You need to be amenable to skipping your paid breaks, and you need to be amenable to working amid your unpaid lunch breaks if you want to be able to significantly reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee. Is it exploitive for an employee to work off the clock without receiving a modicum of compensation nor remuneration? Of course, but it is what it is. You have to make extreme concessions if you want to be able to retain your job. On a whim, for any reason or no reason, an employee can get furloughed, laid off, or fired. So just be wary of that. Most real-price sector jobs based on voluntary demand are often deemed to be dead-end, dispiriting, agonizing, unfulfilling, meaningless, worthless, harrowing, brutally wretched, egregiously abysmal, minimum wage jobs that provide no basis for a future, nor that provide even anywhere close to 1/4 of a subsistence wage for affording the utmost lowest level basic needs that are relegated to the utmost lowest level tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. So just understand that when you work a real plastic job based on voluntary demand for an employer, not only is your income tethered to your time, and not only does it provide no basis for a future, but it only provides you with ephemeral, fleeting, temporary, perishable short-term relief that is preordained to perish or be depleted or evaporate, metaphorically speaking. The cash inflows that you receive from your job are infinitesimal, they are negligible, they are marginal. They are a pittance of the revenue that you could generate if you were to become profoundly successful as an entrepreneur. And when you work a real private sector job based on voluntary demand, it comes at a steep, lofty, exorbitant, sizable cost. When you work a real private sector job based on voluntary demand for an employer, you're borrowing equity out of your time, life, dignity, happiness, health, and future wealth just for a pittance of a non-subsistence wage that provides you with no basis for having a prosperous future. You want to be able to manifest a prosperous, abundant, robust, auspicious, blissful future for yourself into reality. You never want to regress or stagnate You want to be able to actualize your latent potential and reach your overarching goals and reach your higher aspirations and actualize your dreams into reality. You do not want to shirk on doing so. You want to be able to live a meaningful, fulfilling, eventful, inspirational, interesting, laudable, meritorious, worthwhile, stimulating, exciting, and exhilarating life. You want to be able to make meaningful, profound contributions to the world on a global scale. You want to be able to live a highly accomplished life. Do not neglect to do so. Do not live your life on autopilot. You do not want to live a banal, repetitious, monotonous, dull, unexciting, uneventful, uninteresting, uninspiring life. You want people to aspire to be like you. If you are exemplary and a pioneer of your own destiny, be the champion of your own life. Do not be timid, feeble, meek. Foster an abundance mindset. Embrace an optimistic outlook on life. You can empower yourself to be a pioneer of your own destiny. You can be a forward-thinking maverick. You can be an entrepreneur, a creative, an innovator, an inventor. You're not pigeonholed into being an employee. You do not need to grovel at an employer's feet for a prolonged period of time if you so choose to pivot away from the employee workforce and embrace being an entrepreneur if you so choose to do so. You are at liberty to do so. So, if you want to change the trajectory of your life, it is up to you. Do not expect anyone else to do it for you. So, if you want to reduce your risk of getting fired from your company as an employee, you're also going to need to volunteer to take on the utmost grueling, utmost laborious, utmost challenging, utmost agonizing, utmost dreadful tasks whenever requested to do so by an employer. You also need to be willing to maximize your productivity and outperform other employees, as well as desist, abstain, and refrain from socializing. If you are confabulating with other employees, even for 20 seconds to a couple minutes, it will invoke the wrath of your employer, metaphorically speaking. They will become infuriated, livid, irate. You do not want them to become belligerent nor hostile towards you. So, you need to make extreme concessions. You need to make extreme dispensations to appease them. And part of that involves not only maximizing your productivity to outperform other employees, but also ceaselessly, unremittingly, incessantly working to the extent to which there's never any downtime per se. You need to essentially view yourself as a robot or as a machine. Humans are not robots. We're not machines. We're not macros. We're not an artificial intelligence. We're supposed to sleep when we're fatigued. We're supposed to drink distilled water when we're parched. We're supposed to consume fruits when we're famished. We're supposed to take respites as deemed necessary so that we can regain our mental acuity. There's something called diminishing returns. You can incessantly work, but after a certain period of time elapses, you're going to become more and more unproductive. However, you can prolong your productivity for all the time you work if you're willing to take breaks. By taking breaks, when you return to your work, you'll be reinvigorated to continue to work. And it'll help you to regain some semblance of your mental acuity that you lost prior to the advent of taking your break. It is of eminent importance to take breaks whenever deemed necessary, especially if you need to regain your focus. You should not be desultory about how you approach your work. So, if you want to be able to further reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee, you need to be willing to also always volunteer to work every shift that is available due to coworkers calling off at the last minute. You need to be willing to cover coworker shifts if requested to do so by your employer, if you want to be all the more apt to retain your job and all the less apt to get fired from your job. People will call at the last minute. Sometimes they will not give any semblance of notice. They will just quit their job without even notifying the employer. But if you want to be able to retain the job for years on end, or at least reduce the risk of getting fired on your end, even though you can get fired at any given moment by an employer for any reason or no reason, you need to be willing to work those shifts in which your coworkers refuse to work, even though those shifts were assigned to them. It is lamentable that there's no job security nor job stability if you work a real prosecutor job based on voluntary demand for an employer. At any given moment, you could get furloughed, laid off, or fired for any reason or no reason, and it can happen abruptly on a whim. You do not want to have one revenue stream. You want to be able to build up your recurring revenue streams. You want all your revenue streams to be on autopilot, and you never want your revenue to be tethered to your time. You want to have unlimited, unfettered, uncapped earnings potential. You want to be able to cultivate lucrative brands and profusely produce income-generating assets. You can let your target market determine whether or not you will be profoundly successful as an entrepreneur. Whether or not you are profoundly successful as an entrepreneur is predicated upon whether or not your target market consumes your content, and is predicated upon whether or not your target market procures your product offerings and or service offerings, in spite of how meritorious your content may be, and in spite of how worthwhile your product offerings and service offerings may be. You're not guaranteed to earn any revenue as an entrepreneur. So just be mindful of that. I hope that you deem this video to be insightful and enthralling. If you're willing to fully be entrenched in your job and fully dedicate yourself to your job and not have a life outside the scope of your work life at your employee job, then it will allow you to significantly reduce the risk of getting fired from your company as an employee. So It's unfortunate there's no pension, there's no benefits, and there's no 401k offered at most real private sector jobs based on voluntary demand, and there's no payoff on the back end. But it is what it is. I hope that you found this video to be engrossing and insightful. Have a blissful day. Goodbye.